Welcome back to Life's Challenge. My name is Avital, and this week's Parshat is Parshat Beha'alotecha, which is an action-packed Parsha filled with so many topics and stories that it's really hard to know what to choose to focus on. But what I want to talk about today is actually sort of the first topic that we see in this week's Parshat, which is about Pesach Sheni. Now, Pesach Sheni sort of translates to the second Passover, and it was a sort of a concept, again, that is introduced in this week's Parsha, and I will explain what it is. So basically what happened is that it first tells us, the children of Israel shall make the Pesach offering in its appointed time. On the 14th day of this month in the afternoon shall you make it. So first there is the original sort of obligation here for the Pesach offering, that the Jewish people on the 14th day of the first month are supposed to bring the Pesach offering to the tabernacle, or eventually the temple, and that is the appointed time for this festival, for this offering. And then it continues by telling us, there were men who had been contaminated by a human corpse and could not make the Pesach offering on that day, so they approached Moses and Aaron on that day. The men said to him, "We are contaminated through human corpse. Why should we be diminished by not offering Hashem's offering in its appointed time among the children of Israel?" So what they're talking about is that in Judaism, if someone was contaminated, in this case by a human corpse, any sort of physical contamination, a sort of spiritual contamination through a physical encounter, they were not able to bring an offering. They would have to wait usually until the end of that day and immerse in a mikveh before they could bring the offering. But since this was a specific offering, it's not like they could bring this offering tomorrow. God here was telling them, this is the day and the time that you bring this offering. But they were saying, look, we were doing sort of a good deed. We were caring for a human corpse. You shouldn't just let it lay by the road. You have to bury it. So we did that. And because of that, we're contaminated in this spiritual sense, and we can't bring the offering. But why should we miss out on sort of the merit that the nation is getting for bringing the offering on this day? We still want to have an opportunity to bring the Pesach offering. So a very interesting question. And Moses doesn't know the answer to this question, so he basically tells him to wait, and he's going to talk to God, and he'll come back with a response. And so Moses asked God, and what about the people who had been contaminated through a human corpse? And this is what God said. He said that man, he shall make a Pesach offering for Hashem. In the second month, on the 14th day in the afternoon, shall they make it. And it goes through and describes what the specifications for the offering are. And then it continues and it says, but a man who is pure and was not on the road shall be cut off from his people. So a very interesting answer indeed. For the people who had been contaminated by the human corpse, it says that those people were allowed to bring Pesach Sheni, sort of the second Passover offering, 1 month from the date of Passover. So 1 month after Passover happens, they bring their offering to God as sort of to make up for the offering that they couldn't bring because they were, again, contaminated. But it continues to say basically that somebody who was pure and chose not to bring the offering anyway, that person would be cut off from their people. That was kind of an unforgivable thing. And so what can we learn from this? We learn about the intention and that the spirit of our actions matter. The person who really wanted to bring this offering but couldn't do it on the day that it was supposed to be done, his intentions mattered. His spirit that he still wanted to do this thing so badly, he really just felt like this desire inside of him to bring this offering to God and wasn't able to. That person is rewarded with having a second chance, with having an opportunity to do it again. But the person who had no excuses, no reason, and still chose not to do it, that person got cut off. That person doesn't get another opportunity to bring the offering because their intent wasn't there. And so we learn from that intentionality, that the spirit behind our actions really does make a difference. And that sometimes we're going to try to do something and it's not going to work out just the way we thought it was going to work out. But if our spirit and our intention was there, that matters a great deal. Think about how often as a kid Maybe you wanted to make something for your parents. Let's just take a cake as an example. Let's say it's your mom's birthday and you want to make a cake, and you go to the kitchen and you make a cake and you make a mess all over the kitchen, and you give it to your mom, and yes, it might not be the most beautiful cake, and yes, it might not be the most tasty cake, and yes, you maybe left a mess in the kitchen, but when you're like 8 years old, your mom is so happy, the spirit and the intention behind the idea that you wanted to make her this cake, that the rest of it, even if it's a little annoying, sort of falls to the side behind the spirit and the intention of her kid wanting to make her something special. Sometimes we really end up seeing that the intention of something, the spirit behind our actions, really ends up mattering in a sense more than the actual law does, because it really shows that their inclination and that our desires were for a good purpose, and that does count. We see that in this week's Parsha. And so I think that's a very beautiful lesson we can all take away, and I wish you a wonderful week in the Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.